the time to enlist in the service when I was 18 in December 26th, and went into the service on January 11th. This is after I graduated 1 year. I was sent to Biloxi, Mississippi, and that was basic training, and it was where you were going to be determined whether you were going to be a bombardier, a pilot, or a navigator, or a gunner. I went into the gunnery school down in El Paso, Texas, and went to school and learned how to put a 50 caliber machine gun together back and forth and blindfolded and all the kind of things that you had to assume that you were going to have to use that training.
When I was drafted in 1941, we had very few weapons and things like that, like we should have. I was put into a National Guard unit that had been federalized, and so we did have our rifles. But the ammunition that we had overseas and the guns we had overseas, we had never fired in the United States.
I started when I was 18, and I was actually separated from the service before I was 21. I was a bombardier. Actually, I was a bombardier and a navigator, but I flew separately on each capacity. The bombardier, just as a quick explanation, is the bomb aimer, and you're out in the plexiglass part of the airplane because you had to have vision to operate the Norden bomb site, which was a top secret instrument, a precision instrument where we could release bombs in the air and hit an exact spot on the ground.
We started flying our missions, and I ended up flying 32 missions. We were hit many times. We lost 2 engines on one trip over northern Germany, and fortunately we got home from that.
We was on Clark Field, and on the edge of it, with a machine gun battery, I was right along the edge of Clark Field. And the morning of 8th of December, now of course, as I mentioned dates, I'll be a day ahead of you because we're across the international date line. But I pulled guard duty, the last guard duty going off at 6 o'clock. Now for the last month, we'd been out digging our foxholes, getting ready, and we got our foxholes down maybe, an inch and a half, something like that. But every other day, we were getting the day off to go in and wash our clothes or whatever we needed. And this was to have been my day off.
It was on my second mission. I was a newcomer, and so I was assigned to that crew, left my crew that I'd trained in the United States with. And so the mission was to Black Hammer, Germany, to bomb and destroy the refinery there. And I knew nothing about the different targets because I was a newcomer. But I knew something was bad because everybody was very concerned when you walked in and saw that target for today is Black Hammer.
Probably the scariest thing that happened to me during our flight was the fact when we were going over the channel and gaining altitude, and we were in formation. We did the formation over England, and we lost a lot of airplanes just doing formation because of the weather. The weather was terrible, foggy, and all of a sudden, it was in the middle of the night, all of a sudden you'd see an explosion over there and then one over there, and it was some of our B-17s blowing up by collisions. It was just kind of scary.
But when I went in at 11:30, I laid down, and for the first time in my life, I went to sleep. Smith and Sanders drove off without me, And of course I was very much disgusted because it's a hot meal. But about that time, as they got toward the end of the runway, looked up and saw 2 flights, 27 heavy bombers coming in. We said, oh look, here comes the Navy. Well, suddenly the bellies turned black, and we realized that the bomb bay doors were opening. And the bombs came on Clark Field. About 75 pursuit bombers and dive bombers and things like that came in afterwards. And when the raid was over, our captain came out, and we told him, he said, Smith and Sanders went in for the noon meal, and we don't know what happened to them. And then found out the bomb had hit the front fender, another bomb had hit the right door. It blew the truck completely to pieces. It killed both men instantly.
So we turned off, and I see a big wall of black smoke and all these flashing, but that didn't concern me a whole lot except for flying into it. But I hadn't done that with such a big wall of fire ahead of us because I only had one mission. But in any event, so I rough in my bomb sight, and then I sit back and looking around, and all of a sudden there's an airplane right up ahead of us, B-17, just a flash of light, and it disappeared. Nothing fell. I thought, oh my God. So I put my nose back into the bomb sight. I'd seen enough of that. That's the first time I'd seen an airplane explode.
One time, the airplane on top of our formation came down, and our pilot and co-pilot both saw it at the same time, and he was right on top of us, and we took a dive. And I tell you, we went down like zoom. You know, a B-17 loaded with bombs was not an easy thing to handle, especially in a dive. Well, about, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes in the process of getting down, we finally gained enough momentum we could get up. I got up, and I got my parachute on, and I turned around, and my ball gunner was sitting there, and he couldn't find his parachute. So I said, come on. So he got on my back. We kicked the waist door out, and we're both standing there ready to jump out and looking down at that cold water.
The bombs began to come in, Japanese, and dropping mob bombs on us. Our position was bombed almost every other day at least, sometimes every day. I had a bomb hit within 10 feet of the foxhole I was in, came up to the edge of my foxhole, and my hearing has been bad since that time. As the dawn was breaking, as I went down the west side of Cab Cabin field, the Japanese were lighting their fires to build their breakfast. Went on back, and then our captain called us, and he said, General King went forward and surrendered Bataan.
I said, bombs away. We had a terrible explosion. I could feel the heat on the side of my face, and we were blown out of the formation. And the 4 aircraft to my left disappeared. Only thing I saw was a tail section spinning. And then in the same instant, I felt a heavy impact on the right. And I heard guys screaming on over the intercom, I'm hit, I'm hit.
I was in the first group that marched out of Bataan. And we marched from noon one day until 4 o'clock in the next morning. And then the Japanese said, we'll give you 2 hours sleep, and then you'll continue the march. Coming out on the death march, I faced a firing squad in which a Japanese non-com lined about 10 of us along the edge of a bluff. His men loaded their rifles, threw a shell in the chamber. About that time, a Japanese officer stepped out of a building. He yelled something at him, and they told us to continue the march. We did not ask for a second opinion.
So I ran back to see what had happened, and I came to the radio man, and he was down. And I knew he'd been hit because he hadn't responded with bombs away. And so I looked him over and I could see a hole about the size of half a dollar in the small of his back. And I knew he was in trouble. It didn't come out, just a hole going in, penetration. So I rolled him over, and then I went back, came to the ball turret man, and he's slumped over in the turret, and I could see a major hole, projectile, made by a projectile that came through one side and went out the other and went through him, and he was literally cut in two. And so nothing I could do for him. I checked his pulse real quickly, but he was dead. And then I get back to the waist gunners, and one of them is jumping up and down, and the other one's trying to restrain him. He has blood gushing out of his shoulder and in his thigh. So I got him settled down. I actually had to slap him a couple of times to, calm down, so we could get a compression on him to keep him from bleeding to death.
We continued. One time a Japanese searched me, and when he searched me, he took the New Testament out of my pocket, a New Testament that saved my life the day before, because when that shell hit close to me, I felt something hot over my heart. And when I pulled out my shirt, between my New Testament and my body was a chunk of shrapnel. Well, this Japanese soldier took my right Bible out, slammed it down on the ground. I reached over, picked it up, dusted it off. I looked at him, he looked at me. We was on the curve of a road. He looked up and down the road. There were no Japanese or Americans in sight at that moment. And so he turned and walked toward Corregidor, and I turned and walked toward San Fernando. And then I began to tremble, because many a man lost his life for a lot less than that, because I basically caused him to lose face.
I called the pilot and said, "You've got to take us down. We don't have any oxygen back here." And he said, "Well, you got plenty up in front." We had two systems. So I said, "Well, we've got to go down." He said, "We can't." He said, "There are bandits in the area. We'll get shot down for sure." And I said, so I held my breath, literally ran up to my station in the nose, got back on the intercom, and I told him, I said, we've got to take this plane down, because these people are going to die, no question about it. They cannot live at this elevation. I was 19 at the time, going on 20. And so I said, "We're taking the plane down." I said, "I'm not going to be on this." I told him, "I'm not going to be on this aircraft and sacrifice these lives, because they're going to die if we don't take the plane down. And if you don't take it down, I'm going to take it down. I'm going to come back there and take you away from the controls away from you. We're going down." And he finally agreed to do it.
And the radio man came running out, waving his arms, and we just happened to see him, lucky. But he said, we're okay. So we were. The pilot and co-pilot had one battle on their hand of getting that airplane back into the level position where we could then again regroup, and we got back into formation someplace and flew the mission.
We went on down with about 7,000 men, and in 6 weeks' time, 1,700 men died, and so the death rate was very high. A lot of that on the Bataan Death March, because coming out, the Japanese did not give us food or water. The water most people got, they'd reach down in a mud puddle, get a little water just to quench their thirst. A Navajo Indian in my outfit, just as we were starting the march, told me, "Leonard, get a little pebble about the size of a piece of gum and put it in your mouth, because it'll keep the saliva moving in your mouth."
We had a long flight, and I tried to take care of the radio man. He's laying on the floor, and he was cold. And we stayed up to 20,000 feet almost because we had to cross the Alps to get back. And so I took off my stuff and put it on him to try to keep him warm. He was complaining, he's cold, he's conscious. And I knew he probably wouldn't live because we're another hour, well, almost 2 hours away from hospital. And so I nursed him along, and we finally made it back. And we couldn't save him. He had a faint pulse when we landed, and but that was the end of him. So that was my introduction into the real war.
2006, I was stationed in Okinawa, Japan, in 3rd Marine Division. My unit was Combat Assault Battalion. And out of Japan, I was selected to be on a 17-man team that, when we went to Afghanistan, our primary responsibility was to train the Afghan infantry. And in 2006, this was still a fairly new and conceptual kind of thing going on. I deployed with some other Marines out of Okinawa to Paktika province, Afghanistan, which is, if you go directly south from Kabul, you go down all the way to the Pakistan border is the Paktika province. And Paktika province in 2006 was, it's right on the border of, you hear a lot in the news when they talk about the Taliban, you'll hear about Waziristan and the tribal belt, as they call it. And in 2006, that was probably one of the most dangerous places on the planet. And in that southwestern part of Waziristan, right across the border in Afghanistan, was where our FOB, or our forward operating base, was located. And we lived there with what they called a Kandak, which is the equivalent of a battalion in the American military. Not quite as big. It's anywhere from, our Kandak was about, I want to say about 190 to 200 soldiers, Afghans, and that we were training in America, where I believe in our cause. I'm an American, you're an American, regardless of where you're from, who your parents are, what your tribe has done in the past. I could care less. We put all that stuff aside and we fight for the same reason, and we wear the same uniform, and we get that. In their culture, if you're, let's say, the Hazarans, which on their social totem pole is very, very low, it's almost the lowest of Afghan in all of their eyes, and you get the Pashtun Afghans, which are the tip of the pyramid in their social system. If I'm a Hazaran soldier and you're a Pashtun soldier, I immediately don't like you just because of our tribal histories. And they still, to this day, have these generations and thousands-year-old tribal battles, and that's one of their biggest hurdles as a professional military, is getting over those cultural hurdles. That is what's hanging them up, and that's literally the only thing that I could see, one of the biggest issues that was preventing and hindering their success, was their tribal cultural issues. That would lead to smaller problems where you'd get let's say a Hazaran soldier gets promoted to be a squad leader. Well, that Pashtun soldier is going to refuse to be led by a Hazaran because they're scum to them. They don't recognize their authority or their worth. So that is a huge issue with trying to make a professional military, whereas in our military, I could care less where you came from. I could care less what your beliefs are. As long as you're willing to fight as hard as me and wear that uniform, you'll get my life if it comes to that. And that's something that is still a huge problem when I left there. So you try to teach them how to do basic patrols, marksmanship, things like that, and to do a patrol, we'd have to go out and do a real patrol. And the variable there is that it's out in bad guy country, and inevitably we would be doing a patrol and we would come into contact with Taliban or insurgent groups that were waiting for us. Dealing with the Taliban and those fighters that operate in that area their entire life, and generations of fighters have come out of that part of the country. They know what they're doing. They're not ragtag, weekend warriors by any means. The only thing they do is train to fight against the infidels and train to win this jihad, this battle for their religion. And when they believe it to their core that that's what their purpose is, it's a different type of an enemy to deal with. The problem with the war nowadays is it's more of a counterinsurgency operation, where it's different in the sense that there's not a uniformed enemy to my front that is clearly a bad guy. You just don't know where your enemy is, what sex your enemy is. It could be a female, it could be a male, it could be a child, could be an elder man that you wouldn't give a second look to. We used to kind of joke around or put it in a sense that we would say almost everyone in Afghanistan is guilty. And when I say guilty, I don't mean in the fact that they've done something wrong or that they're ingrained in the insurgency in a bad way. How I mean that is because of tribal ties and the type of religion that Islam is, they know someone who is involved with the Taliban or the ACM or the insurgency. And they might not directly know it or understand what he's doing, but you get, say, a small Afghan child and his older brother says, I want you to sit here on this road and just play here, and if you see the Americans leave their where they live, just come and tell me. Well, that little child doesn't realize that he's helping and that he's alerting someone who is going to go in turn tell someone, who in turn tells someone, who in turn tells the Taliban. And that's how it works. It's almost like, I guess the American equivalents would be street gangs, or where they have lookouts. And no matter where you go in that country, you are being watched. If it's not directly from where you live, where they're up on the mountains with their goats, there is always a set of eyes watching you. That makes that whole insurgency something that where it's really hard to trust anybody, because, like I said, even that small child, even though he's not being directly aggressive or engaging us, he's involved in some way, shape, or form. I would say, in my opinion, to be 100% honest, when it comes to the conflict or the war in Afghanistan ending, how I feel is that is never going to go away. That is an enemy, and I know a lot of people, and this is just Dan talking, but I know a lot of people want to believe everything's going to be okay kind of thing, and that is just not the case. As long as those people exist, this is not going to go away. And every chance they get to kill an American, to kill an Israeli, to kill anything that is not Muslim and does not feel how they feel, this is not going to go away. I had done some things in the Marine Corps before this deployment, but I had never truly seen evil until I had seen a detainee that we had caught, an insurgent that we had literally not 30 seconds earlier had been shooting at us, trying to kill us, and we actually detained him without him being killed. The way that he looked at us was something that was just piercing, and I'll never forget how the anger on these guys' face, that they truly, to their core, want us all dead. And as soon as you get complacent or you forget that fact and they get a chance, they will do it. People need to realize that this isn't a fun thing. It's not a clean thing. It's not a humane thing sometimes, but freedom is definitely worth every drop of blood, every ounce of tear, everything that all these Americans are putting into it and dying for is worth it. And You know, you can argue semantics and politics, but it comes down to these people want you dead, and given the chance, they will do it. Every day you can't gaff off what you have as an American. You can't take it for granted. Even the fact that you can complain if you don't agree with the politics or the current president or anything like that. Everybody can agree that they love their freedoms, and I think even the right to complain is something you need to be thankful for. America as a whole is a very spoiled culture, and people want results now. And you know, technology, the faster phone, the faster computer, faster food, faster this. Everybody wants it easy. Everybody wants it now. And when it comes to securing our freedoms, it's not a fast answer, and it's not an easy answer or a clean answer. It's something that requires and is worth methodical thinking and methodical actions, and I think people just need to be more patient when it comes to conflicts like what we're in right now. You might sit in your living room every day and say, oh, it's horrible that 2 more Americans died today, and it is, but the fact that you can just get your Starbucks, sit down in your house and watch TV, you need to be thankful for that.